is a unique thing about the Book of the Dead that you have to understand that's really important, more important than the rest of the book that we're not going to really go into, because all the other spells in this case is unique to Ani, and it won't really fit you or Imhotep or Hunefra or whoever. So we're going to go through the book, the process, and what is the real important part that they didn't really put in the book, and that they probably didn't understand. So now the Egyptian Book of the Dead is basically based on the papyrus of Ani. That's basically where they get it from. So later during the Middle Kingdom, we get the coffin text, which is basically like an update to the Book of the Dead. We might as well say it's a little bit different. But, this basically shows you that, well, one thing is all about, the afterlife. But this basically shows you how much the ancient Egyptians was really into the afterlife, and how everything was about preparing yourself for the afterlife. So, again, when we see a lot of the tombs, when they left so much gold and so much emphasis was placed on the afterlife. Remember, the Egyptians didn't accept nobody's culture. When you came in there, you came to study, they wouldn't do anything that was outside of Kemet, because Kemet wasn't really about progression. It was about the past. It was about going back and understanding what the ancestors was doing, what they did, and trying to remember, exactly how things was, and, regain the consciousness that they lost. A lot of it had to do with the afterlife. Again, this is basically like a small part of our life here on Earth, and the Egyptians seeing that, everything really begins with the afterlife, and it's a process which we're going to really get into to help you understand a lot more. Some of the stuff I touched on before, but you're going to really get a real good update and understanding, with this video. As I said, I saved it because we really couldn't start getting into the Book of the Dead until we really talked about some of the stuff we talked about. And, with the last DVD on Mystery School Volume 3, talking about Osiris and the Jet and getting you to understand how a lot of these things are in us, then, it's going to make a lot more sense when we get into the book of Coming Forth by Day. Because if you just, read this book, you'll make the mistake that a lot of Egyptologists did. And I think, me personally, the book is written a certain way on purpose, to deceive a lot of people. But what's really important when you get in a book is they actually, in this specific book, they actually put in, the illustration, the papyrus, and it's beautiful. It's in there. It's really nice. Well done. They did the best job they could to actually get the entire papyrus in there, and I believe it's in order in the book. So, that's a cool thing that they did, but that's the main thing you really have to focus on. It's the papyrus, but, as they do with the Bible, it's hidden in the words and the way they wrote the book. These people get off on that kind of stuff, hiding the messages inside their words, and that's basically what they did with this book. Because for anybody, and we're talking about scholarly work here, this is not no run-of-the-mill book. This is not, this book was what, $25 at Stanford, and this is a really serious book. Any book on Kemet is considered serious, and a lot of people want more understanding into this. So this is what we're going to get into, and I'm really going to get you guys to understand what is the main basic parts, about the Book of the Dead. Chapter for not letting Ani's heart create opposition against him in God's domain. O my heart, which I have from my mother. O my heart, which I had from my mother. O my heart of my different ages. That's important. We're going to get into that. Do not stand up as a witness against me. Do not be opposed to me in the tribunal. Do not be hostile to me in the presence of the keeper of the balance. For you are my Ka, which was in my body, the protector who made my members hell. Go forth to the happy place whereto we speed. Do not make my name stink to entourage who make men. Entourage is another name that they use for suit. So do not make my name stink to suit who make men. Do not tell lies about me in the presence of the God. It is indeed well that you should hear. Thus saith Thoth, judge of truth, to the great Ennead, which is in the presence of Osiris. Hear this word of very truth. It says, word spoken by he who is in the embalming chamber. Pay attention to the decision of truthfulness and of the plummet of the balance according to its stance. You might not see this on the screen, but this is what it's saying in the book. I have judged the heart of the deceased, and his soul stands as a witness for him. His deeds are righteous in the great balance, and no sin has been found in him. He did not diminish the offerings in the temples. He did not destroy what has been made. He did not go about with deceitful speech while he was on earth. Thus say the great Ennead to Thoth, who is in Hermopolis, this utterance of yours is true. The vindicated Osiris Ani is straightforward. He has no sin. There is no accusation against him before us. Amet shall not be permitted to have power over him. And that's Amet right there, ready to devour the heart. Let there be given to him the offerings which are issued in the presence of Osiris, and may a grant of land be established in the field of offerings as for the followers of Horus. Thus says Horus, son of Isis, I have come to you, O Winnefer, and Winnefer is another name for Osiris, and I bring Ani to you. His heart is true, having gone forth from the balance, and he has not sinned against any god or any goddess. Thoth has judged him in writing, which has been told to the Ennead, and Ma'at the Great has witnessed. Let there be given to him bread and beer, which have been issued in the presence of Osiris, and he will be forever like the followers of Horus. Thus say Ani, here I am in your presence, O Lord of the West. There is no wrongdoing in my body. I have not wittingly told lies. There has been no second fault. Grant that I may be like the favorite ones who are in your suite, O Osiris, one greatly favored by the good God, one love of the Lord of the two lands, Ani, vindicated before Osiris. So what is this scene about? What is this scene about? We've seen this scene a lot. We've seen this depiction a lot. And Ani is talking about, not letting his heart create opposition against him. Basically not letting his heart deceive him. So the whole thing is, when we get into the whole metaphysics of it, what it's talking about consciousness-wise. So your heart is basically, what holds a lot of emotion. We always say, I have a heavy heart. Somebody died or something like that, or this weighs heavy on my heart. I have a burden, that your heart carries. And a lot of times this deals with problems that we have in life. You lost somebody or you did something wrong that you feel guilty about. Mostly dealing a lot with guilt and pain and sorrow and stuff like that. So the whole purpose when you start going to the scales of my odds is when your heart is weighed. Remember, we just said having a heavy heart means you have something on your heart. So your heart is going to be heavier than the feather of my eye. So then, you're going to be found, wanting and, it's going to devour that heart. So Ani is saying, don't let my heart create opposition, because one thing is clear. He is not 100% innocent. So when he's standing before the gods and you're confessing, you're giving the 42 negative confessions, and you're saying, I did not do this, I did not do that. Let's keep it real. Most people have committed a lot of these so-called sins. So he's saying, heart, don't deceive me. Don't create no opposition. I know you know the truth. When we get here, I need you to be calm and cool. So, you don't reveal stuff to these guys that I don't want revealed. This is what he's talking about. So this goes back into the mummification process. So when you're being mummified, and you would leave back then instructions for the priest to do certain things. So now one of the things they would do was they would put the scarab beetle over the heart. Remember, all the organs are removed. Your brain is pulled out through your nostrils. Everything is taken out except for the heart. The heart stays with the body and it's wrapped, and they put a scarab beetle over it. What the beetle is going to do is going to basically cover what you don't want the gods to know. Andy's like, oh my God, I'm going through this thing now. Heart, don't let me down. I'm about to go in front of the scales. So again, the scale is symbolic of, when you're weighing things, you're trying to find the balance. And what we're talking about here on a conscious level is the balance of the subconscious and conscious mind. This is one of the things that you must have in order, to get here. What is, all this stuff is not real stuff that actually happened to you. This is all symbolic, and it's symbolic about a few things, which we'll get into. So, if you just killed somebody, you just did something crazy or bad, you can't have that burden on your heart. And not just that, you can't really become a conscious person, truly conscious, uniting the subconscious and conscious mind if you're doing stuff like that. But, stuff small like telling a small lie, or stuff like, making somebody cry for whatever reason, playing little jokes, that's not something that's basically going to corrupt you entirely. It's just small things that we do. And which is why Andy was allowed to pass through. It worked out for him, as we'll see. So consciously, the scale represents balance. And we understand, I always talk about uniting the conscious and subconscious mind. And in doing so, you basically awaken the third eye. And, this is how, you basically get here. You can't get here without awakening the third eye. So the whole thing is, when we look at the depiction, when you follow it through, Ani's Book of the Dead, the next step is, he makes it past this stage, and he is brought unto Osiris by Horus, and this is where the Bible stole, John 14:6, no man comes to the Father but by me. So we're talking about Horus here. You cannot get to Osiris without Horus, plain and simple. You need Horus to get there. So on a conscious level, what is it saying? It's saying that, as I talked about in part 3, what is Horus? Horus is the third eye. Horus is the pineal gland. So you need to awaken that pineal gland in order to get to Osiris. Okay, so now let's break this down in its entirety according to how the Egyptians describe what happens in the afterlife. So, when you die, again, you meet with Anubis. Anubis guides you through the afterlife. Now, you must be dressed in white linen, wearing sandals, and you must have black paint under your eyes. So then you basically recite, this is basically spell 125. And you recite basically, you give thanks to Osiris. It starts out with the hymn to Osiris or whatever. Basically, kind of sort of kissing Osiris' ass, oh, great Osiris, a great, one who rules the Hall of Justice or what have you. So you're going down the Hall of Truth, the Hall of Justice. Once you finish reciting the spell to Osiris, you move forward into the hall, and you basically come before the 42 gods. Now, when you come before the 42 gods, you basically give your declaration of innocence, or the 42 negative confessions, where you basically say, I have not done this, I have not done that. And if your declaration of innocence is accepted, if your 42 negative confessions is accepted, then you move forward and you have to answer each god, all 42 gods. You have to answer a question. You have to address all 42 and answer their questions. But you also have to know each of their names, and you must know what they represent. You also need to know the name of every door in the room, and you must know the name of your feet and the floor, because the floor is going to address you when it's all over, and it's going to want you to know its name, and it's going to want to know the name of your feet before it lets you tread on it, so to speak. So they ask you questions, and, if you answer the questions correctly before each of the 42 gods, the floor will say, well, I know, you know me, I know you, you can go on ahead and go forward. And then this is when your heart is weighed on the scale of Ma'at against the feather. So your heart is placed on the scale. If it's lighter than the feather or balanced, you can move forward. If it's not, then the heart is thrown on the floor, where Amit devours it and basically destroys it and your soul. So if you move forward, then you go forward before Osiris. So now understand what these beings are representing here. You have Anubis, which is the jackal, which is in the genus Canis, a gene or a species, a dog. Dogs guide you through, physical life. Dogs guide the blind, so to speak, because you're, supposedly blind through the afterlife. Not really if you got those spells, though. So that's Anubis' role. But then you get to Thoth. And Thoth is there, or Tahuti is there to basically record everything. So now with Thoth, Thoth is the god of wisdom. Why wisdom? Thoth is there. When you look at what Thoth is representing here on a metaphysical level, on a conscious level, he's representing the wisdom you have of all your past lives. So when Ani was talking about my heart that I had, with me through the ages, he's talking about all his past lives. So Thoth is there recording the wisdom of all your past lives. If you pass through judgment, then you are given, you take everything with you. You have the knowledge of all your past lives as you go forward. If not, and Amit devours your heart and basically drags you, to the underworld, basically hell, or back to earth, then, your knowledge is basically put in your subconscious, is locked away. And, it's just like with the dream world, when you go to sleep, you have absolutely no clue that you're actually in reality dreaming. You just wake up, in your bed, except for in this case with the Book of the Dead, if Amit drags you back to earth, to hell, here, then, you wake up, being reborn, still having all that wisdom of the ages, the knowledge of all your lives is still locked away in the subconscious. And, what's going to be at the forefront, is the consciousness that you get from your parents, the traits. We inherit all these traits from our parents. But this is why I always say you got to be careful. You got to understand what you put into your consciousness, which is why I give you this information to get into your consciousness, because something can happen to you in life that triggers, that sparks a reminder, or, an attachment, an attraction to this knowledge. And then you'll pick up in, your next life, this information, and you'll continue down that path again. And perhaps you'll maybe do what's necessary to open a third eye and to become conscious again. I get, emails and messages from a lot of people from a lot of different places, black, white, what have you, that grew up in churches. I grew up in a church. And most of these people always say the same thing. I just don't feel the same way about Christianity as my parents do. My uncle was a preacher. But a lot of these people be having fathers and mothers that's like pastors and preachers and really high in the church. They go to church every Sunday, 3 times a week. And they be the outcast of the family, talking about, I just feel like Kemet is the truth. And what I'm hearing about the Egyptians is real. I'm not attracted to Christianity. I'm attracted to this. So in this aspect, when you think about the recording of that wisdom and what Thoth is doing and taking that wisdom, and either you'll have it with you, and we're going to get into this a little bit more, or, it's just sent back to this world and you start all over again from scratch. So, all these gods here have a role, and you have Amit, which is, he's a crocodile, a lion, and a hippo, because the Egyptians basically took the 3 biggest animals that hunt and kill men that they can find and put it here to just symbolize, the worst possible thing that can happen to you as far as having your soul and heart devoured. They picked these 3, just like, with the Europeans when they picked the whole Satan boogeyman thing in hell. The worst terrible thing that can happen to you is you just burn for eternity. What kind of pain would that be? They came up with that and gave us hell and the hellfire to scare us. The Egyptians gave us Amit. But when you look at this whole papyrus, we look at this whole scroll here of Ani and his Book of the Dead, and this scene here, what it's talking about, is so much going on here. And, when you understand what it's talking about on a conscious level, metaphysically, and what everybody is representing, then you really start to understand, what it's talking about. You see the gods at the top representing 42 gods, and so many things going on in this scene. But, Thoth is one of the most important things here, understanding wisdom. Why would he be there, with the ibis head, writing what? What data are you collecting if you don't make it? Amit devours you in your soul, and that's it. It's gone. So you gotta look into it more deeply and understand. He's collecting the wisdom, and Ani kind of gives it away when he's talking about the heart that he had through my ages, through throughout history, throughout his whole history. So it's going to make a lot more sense when we get back into where Ani's at as far as the afterlife, and then what he does. So again, when you start to read this book on the surface, it's really confusing. It really throws you off on a lot of different things. This is what it's talking about metaphysically. So I definitely want you to get this. So now we see Horus bringing people before Osiris, Ani, Imhotep, or Unefra. He's bringing people before his father Osiris. And we got to understand, one, there is no Horus, as I talked about. There's no Horus. He's not there. And the person is not there. Horus is just representing, when you put the two together and you combine it, it's representing the consciousness of that person that passed. It's his consciousness that's moving through the afterlife. Osiris represents the transition between one existence to another. That's one of the things he represents, especially in this aspect. So it's a lot more to this. But let's go to plate 7. And it says, here begins praise and recitations going in and out of the God's domain, having benefit in the beautiful west, being in the suite of Osiris, resting at the food table of Winifred, who is Osiris, going out into the day, taking any shape in which he desires to be, playing at Senet. And Senet, if you look up here at the depiction, is that board game that he's playing while his wife looks like she's doing his hair or something like that. But that's Senet. Sitting in a booth and going forth as a living soul by the Osiris Ani after he has died. It is beneficial to him who does it on earth. We're going to get into that. It's deep. Now, coming to being all the words of the Lord of all. I was Atum when I was alone in the primordial waters. We got into this. I was Re in his glorious appearings when he began to rule what he had made. What does it mean? It means Re when he began to rule what he had made, when he began to appear as king before the support of Shu had come into being. When he was upon the hill which is in Hermopolis, when he destroyed the children of impotence on the hill which is in Hermopolis. I am the great God, the self-created. Who is it? The great God, the self-created, is water. He is Nun, father of the gods. Otherwise said, he is Re. He who creates his name, Lord of the Ennead. Who is he? It is Re, who has created his name and his members. It means the coming into existence of those gods who are in his suite. I am he who is not opposed among the gods. Who is he? He is Atum, who is in his sun disk, otherwise said. When you look at the depiction and follow it across, you'll see some of the things that I'm saying is right in the depiction. They just scrambled it up here for a reason. We're going to get into that. He is Re when he rises in the eastern horizon of the sky. To me belongs yesterday, I know tomorrow. That's important. To me belongs yesterday, I know tomorrow. What does it mean? As for yesterday, that is Osiris. As for tomorrow, that is Re. On that day in which the foes of the Lord of all were destroyed and his son Horus was made to rule. Otherwise said, that is the day of the We Remain festival. And there's a lot of festivals that go on in Kemet. When the burial of Osiris was ordered by his father, Re, the battleground of the gods was made in accordance with my command. What does it mean? In the West, it was made for the soul of the gods in acceptance with the command of Osiris, Lord of the Western Desert. Otherwise said, it means that this is the West, to which Re made every god descend, and he fought the two up for it. I know that great God who is in it. Who is he? He is Osiris. Otherwise said, his name is Re. His name is praise of Re. He is the soul of Re, which whom he himself copulated. I am that great Bennu bird, which is in Hermopolis, the supervisor of what exists. And the Bennu bird also represents the sun in rebirth and creation. That's something to think about. Who is he? He is Osiris. As for what exists, that means his injury. Otherwise said, that means his corpse. Otherwise said, it means eternity and everlasting. As for eternity, it means daytime. As for everlasting, it means night. I am men, and his going forth. I have set the plumes, and plumes is basically feathers, on his head. What does it mean? As for men, he is Horus, who protected his father. As for his going forth, it means his birth. Important. As for his plumes on his head, it means that Isis and Nephthys, who, when you look up there by the body, that's Ani's body, all mummified in the coffin and everything. When you look at the two hawks there, that is Isis and Nephthys. Isis and Nephthys went and put themselves on his head when they were the two kids, and they were firm on his head. Otherwise said, they are the two great and mighty Uriah, which are on the brow of his father, Atum. So now, this plate 7 is one of the most important plates in the Book of the Dead, in the Book of Going Forth by Day. Because this plate is going to really help you understand what that means, coming forth by day. And this whole entire plate, what is being said here, everything I just read, is basically talking about the afterlife and being reborn again, coming back, to Earth. So the afterlife and what you can do, what's possible, what he's doing with his conscious energy, and then being reborn, coming back. And the Bennu bird, deals with the sun and creation, rebirth, or what have you, which is why I talked about that, and which is why it really got into the whole thing. Now, you'll see this a lot in the Book of the Dead when it's talking about the Osiris Ani. And you got to understand what it means in that aspect. And we're going to get into that in a second. But, it's talking about rebirth. It's talking about reincarnation, so to speak. So you got to understand. Remember, he's dead. He's basically, he has the knowledge. And one of the things about the Egyptian underworld that you'll see, they talk about, you having your plot of land to basically go and tend to. It's work you got to do. This is where the Bible stole that from in the book of Genesis. Remember, in the Garden of Eden, the whole garden thing, where did that come from? Now you see where it come from. Because in Egyptian underworld, you have a plot of land, a garden, so to speak, that you have to tend to, that you have to basically plant. You got a little job to do. You got to plant in the field or whatever. So this is where the Bible stole the whole garden story. Stole it from here. That's one thing. And, Adam tilling the ground. That's where they stole it from. Stole it from here. So he's talking about, the afterlife and what he's doing. He's with his wife. He's playing board games. He can be anything that ever happened during his existence. He can experience any experience he's ever experienced in any lifetime. Plain and simple. He can go through it all. That's why he's describing, I was Ray, or, I was the Atum. I was alone in the waters of noon, in the dark waters. He's talking about the beginning of creation and everything like that. And he's basically describing what he can do. I can be anybody. I can go through any of the experiences. I can be, there when impotence was wiped out in Hermopolis, all kinds of stuff like that. He's talking about what he can do in the afterlife as far as having the knowledge that he has. It's going to make a lot of sense in a second. So then you would think to yourself, and a lot of people would say, if you, make it through judgment, the afterlife, you see the whole process you got to go through. You got to know the spells. You got to be able to know all these guys' names to answer the questions. You got to have a name for your feet. I mean, if you make it through all that, why in the world would you want to come back here? Why would you want to come back to Earth? So, and it's something you got to understand when I talked about before, our purpose. And this is one of the reasons why I said that and where I got it from. Because one of the things our purpose of being here is to develop. It's develop your conscious energy. And this is what he's describing when he's talking about Ray, talking about the sun. This whole thing is really about energy and consciousness and coming back. And this is what you would need to come back. And the reason why you would come back is because all your past lives is an experience that you had in the past. So when he says that to me belongs, yesterday. I know tomorrow. That's why I say that's important to understand. To me belongs yesterday because everything that happened before he died, he knows it belongs to him. Tomorrow, he knows because he's going to create tomorrow. Tomorrow is whatever he wanted it to be. Is what he can only create tomorrow from what he knows. And you got to understand, you can watch somebody ride a bike. You can watch somebody play basketball. You're not going to truly understand it and know it unless you experience it. So you grow. Remember, consciousness needs reality in order for it to grow. This is what this whole thing is about. You cannot have consciousness without existence. And that's a big debate that a lot of people get into, which one was here first, existence or consciousness? Well, consciousness has nothing to perceive without existence. So existence had to be here first. So when you want to really, really get deep into it, you talk about that. So you only can grow consciously and energetically off of your experiences in life. So when he's talking about I was men, and men has many different aspects. So men is the fertility god. Men has many different forms. In some aspects he could be Kim, which is god of reproduction. Another aspect he could be Khnum, who is the god of creation. Remember, Khnum fashioned man on the potter's wheel. So men has many different forms. Men is the son of Osiris and Isis. So that's another thing to understand. But when you see men, you'll never forget men. Men is the one who you always see with that erect penis, holding the flail, with the feathers or whatever on his head, the whole thing on his head. This is how you always see men. So a lot of people, when they see men, they don't forget that. And it has to deal with rebirth. It's just that simple. So here, he's talking about I was men. He was being men. And he's talking about men in the aspect of rebirth. So whenever you see, when it's talking about Osiris Ani, it's basically talking about what is Osiris, as we talked about in part 3 of Mystery School. Osiris, and that aspect is the spine. So Osiris Ani would be the spine attached to Ani, or whatever Ani incarnates as. So when it's saying here, it said, going forth as a living soul by the Osiris Ani. After he had died, it is beneficial to him who does it on earth. So, going forth as a living soul by the Osiris Ani. How would you come back? The spine. Remember, sex. This is why I got into that whole thing. As I said, I make videos for a reason. Sexually, when you have the stimulation, you're having sex, you have the thought, even during sex, you have the consciousness to create the energy, goes to the hippocampus, down the fibers of the coronary plexus to the fornix, and that whole process happens down to the sacral nerve, and have the erection, and this is constantly going on, with sex. It's the abundance of energy that's taking place. This is how he's going to come down, but it's going to be down the spine, the jad. So this is how he's going to come back. So when it's saying going forth as a living soul by the Osiris, and he's talking about the spine. And when you pay attention to the aspect of men, he's talking about the Bennu bird, which has to do with rebirth, creation. Men, who has to do with fertility, has to deal with creation. He's talking about being recreated. This is what that giant penis is for. So he's talking about coming back through sexual union. So he's giving you here death and rebirth.